What up, y'all? It's the Robot Watcher. Grab your binoculars, and I'm back with another eval. Super Bowl over. You know what that means. It's the off season. It's draft season. Free agency coming up soon. So let's get into another player eval. Let's switch back to the offense after seeing Dan Morgan's comments talking about how we need playmakers on both sides of the ball. You know, running back, tight end, wide receiver. Let's talk about Kyle Williams out of Washington State. And if you like the video, like, comment, subscribe, do all this stuff. Let me know what prospects you want to see next. Turn on the post notifications so you always get the videos. Watch out for that Patreon coming soon. Let's get into the video. Now, Kyle Williams, I don't know if this is going to be a short or long video because I got a lot of clips. But let's talk about him, man. He is a 5-year player. He went to UNLV first for the first 3 years. Was an okay guy, good contributor. Last year, transferred to Washington State with Cam Ward. Had a really good year. Not a super crazy superstar year. And then this year had 1,100, almost 1,200 yards, 14 touchdowns. So, let's get into it. First thing you got to talk about is, for his strengths-wise, his releases. He uses his releases to win so easily. Apologize if you hear my dog in the back growling. Not sure what he's doing that for. But he just wins with his releases 24/7. I talked to him for a second at the Senior Bowl. He talked about how he modeled his game after Devontae Adams, Doug Baldwin, Stevie Johnson. Those guys that have so many different release packages, so many different steps and diamond releases, things like that, to beat guys at the line of scrimmage. And when I talk about at least one of the shades of that I'll do later on at the end of the video, you'll see another guy that wins consistently with his releases at the line. So you're winning automatically. No matter whether it's short, deep, or intermediate route, you're winning at the line by getting your guy out of his, getting your cornerback outside of his leverage off of, just beating him, period. And it helps him when he's going deep, helps him whenever he's getting into his route. Like, he's a smaller guy, so that will help him at the next level be able to play on the outside. So yeah, really good releases. You can kind of move them around all over the field, whether it's slot, maybe X, Z. He plays some X at Washington State. Because of his releases, guys aren't going to be able to get their hands on him, to press him, jam him up, and get him stuck at the line. It's going to be interesting to see where he plays at the next level because of this, and how good he'll be at the next level because of this. Could be very dangerous from the slot because, you're giving him three-way go, or whatever, some things like that. Next thing I want to talk about. Actually, yeah, let's keep it going with the releases and into the same theme. His route running is really good also. He's very sharp when it comes to his breaks and cutting off routes. Like, there's a route against, I want to say, Boise State, where he kind of looking like he's going to make, big, deep crosser, and he just snaps it right off with his hips right at the top of the route when the cornerback has turned his hips to engage and run with him, and turns it into an out route, 90-degree angle, snaps and turns it into an out route. So you have somebody with such good releases like that, and good stems and breaks that he has. It's going to be very hard to guard him at all levels of the defense, not just at the line, but also later into his route. I mean, there's a couple on here where he's kind of giving guys great, and that's another thing I want to highlight in this route running concept. Great foot, you choose wrong and he goes the other way. He has routes like that, especially going deep on his tape. So a guy who's going to beat you with press with his releases and his breaks, a guy that has a good enough footwork to beat you on off coverage and get you to guess wrong and give you, create cushion and separation between you. He's going to be a very tough guard at the next level. A very refined route runner, very refined release package, things like that. Just a good floor for a wide receiver. Guys that can get up and create separation, those are high floor wide receivers where, they'll be productive or, provide you a positive on the field at the next level. Next thing I want to talk about, Yak. Things we need in Carolina are the first three things I talked about. Separation, Yak. There's going to be something else on this list that we'll talk about later, but Yak. He is not a Debo Samuel. He's not a Cordell Patterson or somebody like that where they can almost damn near play running back. But he's one of those electric players where he's able to break tackles even at his slender frame. He's able to beat guys, beat angles, tackling angles. I mean, there's plenty of tape of him taking slants, screens, 40, 50, 60 yards to the house. Running through arm tackles, running through guys, hitting them. He's kind of bouncing around, because that's just not running between the tackles, things like that. It's just not, it's not going to bode well for him. But I could see him getting a reverse, Kind of reminds me of Curtis Samuel. We used to give him reverses, or Ted Ginn in that Arizona Cardinals game in the playoffs, I think it was. We won like 35-13. He had that reverse for a touchdown. He can take a reverse and get you 10, 15, maybe even more yards. he could take a jet sweep and, you know, give you 10, 15 yards. And those may not look like much, but that shows a lot of his yak. I mean, we see the guys that we have, you're throwing it behind the line of scrimmage or giving it to him behind the line of scrimmage, and we're getting maybe 3, 4, or 5 yards max. So a guy that can consistently get you 10 plus and even more, even touchdowns, is great. Like I said, just on bubble screens, slant routes, things like that, short routes that take the pressure off of the QB because he doesn't have to consistently be perfect. You're getting a guy that makes your QB better by just we talk about it with Brock Purdy all the time, how, oh, he has all these weapons, he has Debo to do this, Kittle to do this. We don't have anybody like that for Bryce. Bryce is doing everything. Of course, guys are doing their job, getting open, catching the ball, providing, you know, maybe good speed and good releases, route running. But there's no yak after that. It's always consistently Bryce put on the money, Bryce put on the money, things like that. This guy will be able to take some of that off of Bryce at the next level with his yak. Next thing I want to talk about, he has really, really good speed. I kind of mentioned a little bit in his yak, but not as much. I think he was close to 22 miles per hour at the Senior Bowl. He was at like 21.6 from what I seen on the big scoreboard when I was there. Even on his tape, talking about all these long runs and how he's able to beat tackling angles. He's not like butt naked. He's in front of everybody already. He's taking off. He's taking screens and beating the touchdown. So the speed that he has, and you see it whenever he's releasing and going on deep passes, to consistently be able to stack corners or just run past guys. I mean, there's post plays, clear out routes where he's just simply running past guys. Really, really good speed. I'm anxious to see what he runs at the combine. I wasn't sure about his speed when I was watching his tape with Cam Ward. Then when I got more tape from this year, I was like, okay, I'm starting to see it. And then at the Senior Bowl, I'm like, nah, this guy is pretty fast. If he's in the 4.3s, well, I don't think it'll be 4.3s like 4.32, but if he's in a 4.38, 4.37, or even low 4.4s, 4.4 flat, really, really good for him. And I think he'll be a little bit faster than 4.4 flat based off the miles per hour I've seen in the Senior Bowl. But dog, if he's a 4.35, 4.36 up guy, it's a little scary. It's a little scary with all the combinations of things that I've talked about, all the traits that he has. One of the last two things I want to talk about, great hands. Great hands. I talked to him about this when I was able to interview him at the Senior Bowl. I was talking about how he has such late hands. I mean, there's plenty of times downfield, especially. That's when you mostly see it downfield, where there's a guy draped all over him. He has just late hands to let it come into his chest. Pause. That was crazy. But to let the ball get into his chest and pull it in before the DB even has a chance to really swipe away at it, because his hands are he's showing his hands late, basically. And there's plenty of contested catches where he's coming back to a bad pass, underthrown from Cam Ward, or he's kind of tracking it over his shoulder with his eyes up. Very, very good hands. I didn't see too many drops or any drops on his tape from the games I watched. I think I watched 5 or 6 games. Didn't see any of the drops or any drops from those games. I've seen him go and get it outside his frame. Really good player, one-handed catches, things like that. Really good player. Even at Senior Bowl, he had a really good catch where he's kind of coming back and the DB's on him, and the ball is way over his head, but he's able to go up outside his frame and get it, even with the DB kind of being, you know, aggressive and pushing him throughout the route. Really, really good hands, really reliable hands. So I know it sounds like a first-round receiver when you talk about all these traits and stuff, but we'll get into the stuff where, you know, that's not necessarily his game next. Last thing I want to talk about, he has just a really good feel for scramble drill and also in zone. He kind of knows when to cut his route short, kind of slow his tempo, his routes in between windows. For the quarterback, there was a really good dig route that he scored a touchdown on, where he kind of tempoed the route to go right behind the linebacker instead of deep in towards the safety's chest, right behind the linebacker, but also slow down and tempo through that window. So I want to say Cam Ward, or maybe it was the quarterback that they have now, who is going to be a draftable guy from what I've seen, slow down in that window so he can get the ball cleanly, you know, without anybody disrupting it or, you know, picking it off, something like that. But also, especially with Cam Ward and the last quarterback, he's really good at scramble drill. He knows when to go up field, come back for his quarterback, kind of, you know, get open, get into the soft spots, especially when it's a man, you know, tracking him behind him. He's able to get open, maybe not create separation, but just get open enough to where he can show his hands to the quarterback and be a good outlet. And we seen last year, the main guy that was doing that was Jatavian Sanders, and he created huge explosive plays. So getting a wide receiver with much better yak, much better speed, and downfield ability to do that, is a little very, very dangerous, especially with a quarterback that we have like Bryce Young, who's going to be notorious for extending plays. I mean, we've seen it against the Eagles with Leggett. Imagine if instead of Leggett, that was Kyle Williams and the yak and speed that he has to just beat one man. It would have been an explosive play versus Philly when they was on that 1 yard line and 3rd and 11, whatever it was. So, yeah, that's all I got for the strengths. Really, really good player. Is going to be really high on my wide receiver rankings. I'm not sure how high he is on my board because it's just crazy defensive guys all over the place. And let me know if y'all want a big board. I might drop that. Maybe a top 100. Yeah, maybe a top 100 big board. Maybe top 50. Let me know if you guys want that. But yeah, let's get into the stuff that's not necessarily his game. All right, so for the stuff that's not necessarily his game, and if I sound weird, I apologize. I think I'm getting sick. Yeah, I think somebody got me sick, but we'll see. I'll find the culprit eventually. But for the stuff that's not his game, we ain't gonna sit here all day. I ain't gonna lie, it's not a lot from what I've watched. It's not a lot that's not necessarily his game because he didn't have drops or anything. 5th year breakout. Before this, he had 400 yards, 600 yards, 541 yards, 842 and 6 touchdowns was good. And then this year he had 70 catches, 1,100 yards, basically 1,200 yards and 14 touchdowns. 5th year breakout is a red flag, but at least he was being a contributor. He wasn't getting 100 or 89, 70 yards before that, wasn't even getting on the field. At least he was being a contributor. I mean, as a true freshman, being able to step in at 18 years old, 19 years old, and get 426 yards and 2 touchdowns, pretty good. You know, true sophomore, 601 yards, 2 touchdowns. It's pretty good, you know. As a junior, only 534 yards, 5 tutties. You know, you want to see better and want to see a breakout by then. But, you know, as a 4-year senior, getting 842, six touchdowns in your 5th year, 1,100 or 1,214. It's interesting. It is a red flag to note because maybe this guy won't be a dominant receiver at the next level. So that's what, you know, that kind of eliminates him from being that first round pick. You know, this is going to be our guy. But he could be that. You never know. Puka Nacua never had a dominant breakout season either. I know he had injuries and stuff. Neither did Ladd. I know he had injuries and stuff in offense. But, you know, you never know. We'll see. Next thing I have, he's a slender, small guy. He was 182 pounds, only 5'10". They had him listed at 6 foot. Kind of knew that was cap. But 5'10", almost 5'11". 182. It's a good enough build at the NFL level, but it is very slender. I think maybe if guys can, you know, get him tamed on his release packages and can stick with him and be patient with their feet, and they're super physical and much stronger than him, he might have issues at the next level getting jammed into the ground or getting jammed out of his route, things like that. Other than that, I didn't see much that wasn't necessarily his game. So let's get into his player build. All right, man. Last part of the video. Let me see if I even have it on my phone. If not, I don't know by memory, basically. So his player build. For me, I'm going to keep it simple. Keep it simple. He's a shifty playmaker to me. It's going to be a guy that you're going to be able to put out there and route up DBs, win at the line of scrimmage, win within the routes. But he's not just a possession route runner guy. He can be a guy that's going to get you a 60-yard touchdown, whether it's a go ball or a screen or in and around. I think he's going to be a guy that's going to come up and make big catches randomly throughout the game. Some deep downfield or over the middle spectacular catch through a defender, you know, acrobatic catches, things like that. He's going to be your spark plug to your offense, a guy that's just going to simply make plays. Now, he can also help at all 3 levels. You know, winning on short stick routes, slants, things like that, kind of getting down, drags, and maybe turning it into more. And he is a 3-level threat to me. But overall, I think he's just going to be a playmaker. Maybe he's not this dominant guy where you can give him a 30% target share in your offense. He's going to be a guy that commands 120 or 110, 100 targets, period, in the offense for a full year. But if he's a guy that you give him 70 targets, he gets 40, 50 catches, he can be at 700, maybe even 1,000 and 5+ touchdown guy a year, and that's a really, really good player at the back end of day 2 to me, or maybe even high day 2. That's still a good player. So shades of guy that I was kind of mentioned earlier, Super Bowl champion Devonta Smith. I think these guys both win in the same ways and kind of play in the same ways. Devonta Smith plays much bigger than his size when it comes to coming down with contested catches, things like that. He's also a pretty decent yak threat. I think Kyle Williams is faster than him, so you kind of get that plus. But really good route runner also, and he mainly wins at the line of scrimmage with his releases. You're able to put a much slender guy like Devonta Smith on the outside because he's simply going to keep guys' hands off of him. And if he has enough core strength to, even if they aren't able to get his hands on him, he can play through it somewhat and go get a catch. And he's a shifty playmaker. You know, on the Eagles games, he's consistently just making plays, making those spark plays to change the game with Jalen Hurts. as his quarterback. So I think that's a good high-end ceiling comp. A great wide receiver 2, maybe even low-end wide receiver 1. Devonta Smith could probably be a wide receiver 1 on his own team. Maybe not like an elite one, but like I said, low-end to high-end wide receiver 2. I can see that being his ceiling. Really mainly the high-end wide receiver 2, not necessarily low-end 1. Number 2 guy, for shades of Jerry Jeudy. Another guy who's a shifty, great route runner. Not necessarily much as his releases as much as Devonta Smith, but within the route, he has great footwork, great stems and things like that, just like Kyle Williams does. He's able to provide some yak and some speed downfield, a 3-level threat. Not as much of a yak threat, but he is really good yak threat. And we see this year, he broke out as a wide receiver 1. So, and we also see him struggle in other offenses as a wide receiver 2. So that could be the fluctuation that you get with Kyle Williams one year. Or, for the last shades of, Jamari Thrash. Somebody who hasn't done much in the league, but a guy that I like for a lot of the same reasons I like Kyle Williams. Kyle Williams has better hands to me, much better contested catcher to me. He is way faster than I think Jamari Thrash was. I think he ran 4.46. I think Kyle Williams should be faster than that. He has better yak. So, but I can see that being where a guy that I loved him a lot, he comes to the league, maybe gets into a deep wide receiver room because he fell in the draft a little bit, and he has a little bit of promise, but he doesn't do much his first year. I can see that being Kyle Williams. So, buyers beware with Kyle Williams. You're not going to get a elite wide receiver draft him. He's not going to be that guy. But your best hopes is maybe he could be a good to high-end number 2 or a good wide receiver 3 at best. And I think that's worth probably a high third round, maybe back of the second round pick, maybe, if you really fall in love with him. But yeah, anywhere in the third round or later, once he gets to the 4th round, 5th round, I think he's a steal. But anywhere in the 3rd round, I think that's a good draft positioning for Kyle Williams. Really going to be high on my wide receiver board. So if you like the video, like, comment, subscribe, do all the YouTube stuff. Put a beat binoculars. I'm out. I'll see y'all next week. Congrats to the Eagles for winning the Super Bowl. And shout out to Kendrick, they not like, hey, you know what it is. We out, man.